Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here, and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. Now this video was not planned, but we have had double game week 22 confirmed. We now have the fixtures for double game week 22, and therefore I thought what I would do is just give you my initial thoughts to it ahead of the FA Cup fixtures this weekend, because that could potentially change the double game week, which we'll discuss in the video. Give you some initial thoughts, and then next week we'll go into it in a little bit more detail. We'll talk about which players I might be including either as my transfers or on my free hit. If you can do one thing for me to support the channel today, I did release a Psychology 101 video earlier today. It has been completely overshadowed by the double game week announcement, of course. So after watching this or before, please do go check out that Psychology 101 video. It's on the role of gut feeling in an FPL and whether we should trust our gut or whether we should go with the more logical, rational decisions. Without further ado, guys, let's jump into today's video. So this won't be as long as my usual videos because, like I said, this is just an initial thoughts to the double game week announcement. What I'm thinking at this moment in time with respect to what chips I might play, what transfers I might make, and what I think you should do as well, maybe some players that we should be considering. So first thing to note is which teams are doubling in double game week 22. So if you do follow Ben Crellin over on Twitter, he did actually predict this as one of the scenarios. He also predicted one extra game, but he pretty much got it spot on. So what this does tell you is definitely go follow Ben Crellin, because he did predict that this was likely to be the games that would be the doubles in 22. So the first team that are doubling in 22 is Brentford. Now this is not a fixture to target for me, even if I was on a free hit, even if I was on a wildcard. I don't think I would be including many players from this. You could potentially long term, if you are wildcarding, look to include a Brentford player because their defense is quite good. So you might want to include someone like Janssen or Pinnock on a wildcard, but I'd probably have them on my bench this week because Liverpool away and Manchester United at home are not really fixtures you want to target. The second team that double are Brighton. They play Crystal Palace at home and Chelsea at home. So two home fixtures, and we know how brilliant Brighton are in defence. Now, Chelsea have started to click a little bit in attack, but they're not necessarily the most free-flowing team in the Premier League. They're not a Liverpool or a Manchester City. So that's not a terrible fixture. And you would say that Crystal Palace is a pretty decent fixture as well. So I would probably avoid their attackers for the most part, but I do like the look of someone like a Cucurella or a Sanchez potentially in defence. You've also got Burnley, who double. They have a double game week of Leicester at home and Watford at home. I'd say that's a pretty good double game week. Obviously, Leicester's not the best fixture in the world, but it depends which Leicester turn up. And Watford, again, is a very strange one because Watford attack very well, but they defend quite poorly. But to be honest, you would probably want a Burnley defender over a Burnley attacker because the only Burnley attacker you would want is Cornet, but he's, of course, gone off to African Cup of Nations. So I guess maybe just a cheap Burnley defender is something that you might want to look at just because they've got Lowton, they've got Taylor. These are two players that you might want to chuck in with relatively okay creativity and also the chance for a clean sheet across one of the two fixtures. The fourth team that double are Chelsea. They've got Manchester City and Brighton away. They're not great fixtures, but we do know that Chelsea are very, very good. Unfortunately, obviously, James and Chilwell are both injured. So you're probably looking at maybe like a Marcus Alonso, a Rudiger, or you could try and get into that attack, maybe like a Hudson-Odoi, maybe Lukaku if you think you want to go there, but I think I'd prefer Kane and Ronaldo. The next team that double are Leicester. They've got Burnley away and Tottenham at home. Again, a sort of mixed bag of a double game week. Tottenham at home is a tricky one to try and predict. It depends what Tottenham turn up. But I do think there are clear signs of improvement under Conte, so I don't think that's an easy fixture. But Burnley away is definitely one you'd want to target. So someone like a Maddison might be a fantastic option. Or in defence, you could go for like a Luke Thomas or a Castagna. There are so many options with Leicester, but it's difficult to try and nail the one that's going to play two fixtures in that double game week. Then you've also got Manchester United. Now, I'd say this is probably, alongside Watford, probably the best double game week for the teams that are listed here. Villa and Brentford, they are both away games, but I don't think that's necessarily an issue with Manchester United. In fact, traditionally in the past, we've struggled to perform at Old Trafford. So I don't think that's a bad one. The issue is which players do you go for? We don't know what's happening at fullback. It looks like Wan-Bissaka and Shaw are the two first choice fullbacks once again, but whether they're going to rotate with Tellers and Dalot in the double game week, we just don't know that. I don't think the centre-backs are worth going for. The midfield's very, very difficult because we don't know whether it's going to be Greenwood, Rashford, Sanchez. There are so many different options in there. So realistically, it's probably De Gea and Ronaldo that you'd want to go for from Manchester United. But there are some other options in and around that. Spurs, again, are probably a slightly trickier the double game week than we were hoping for. Arsenal at home and Leicester away. I think together, they're not the most difficult set of fixtures, but neither of them are particularly target worthy. You wouldn't look at them and go, really, I really want to target that double game week. But for me, if I were to free hit or wildcarding, I'd probably have at least one Spurs attacker. It would probably be Son or Kane. If I'm on a free hit, I'll probably go for Son and Kane. And then I think Davies and Reguilon are two fantastic options in defence. We've been saying this for a long time now. What I would say, which we'll discuss in the next section or one of the future sections, is that the Spurs fixtures aren't that great after the double game week. So I'm not sure that I'd want to triple up on Spurs if I were wildcarding or making free transfers. The final team, like I said, one of the best double game week set of fixtures here is Watford. Now, they have Newcastle and Burnley, again, both are away, but I don't see that as a massive issue. I'll be honest, it's Dennis and King or Dennis or King. I don't think you want to go for any other players. You might want to go for like a Sissoko in midfield because he could potentially be all right budget on the bench for the double game week. But outside of Dennis and King, I don't think I would look at any of their defenders. Definitely not. It doesn't matter how nice the fixtures are. I just wouldn't be going there myself. Maybe on a free hit, you might want to take the risk with one of their cheaper defenders. But for me, if you're making free transfers, you definitely don't target the Watford defence. So that's a quick little ramble through the fixtures that we've got. I would say, looking at this, Manchester United, Watford, and then maybe Burnley if you're just looking at the fixtures. But obviously, teams like Leicester, Spurs and Chelsea are a little bit better than the likes of Burnley and Watford, and therefore you might want to bring in their players anyway, despite the fixtures not being great. Let's move on. So this part is absolutely critical and definitely worth noting, and I think a few might have missed this. If you click on the Premier League's announcement, if you go onto their actual website and look at the announced double game week fixtures that we've got, what they say is, please note that if any of these teams' FA Cup third round matches this weekend are postponed, their Premier League fixture listed below will be affected. So the new fixture that's just been added, that's been given them the double game week, that will be affected if the FA Cup games don't go ahead. So in other words, what I've taken from this, let me know if I'm wrong down below, is these doubles are contingent on the fact that the FA Cup games go ahead this weekend. So all of the teams that are doubling, the badges that you can see next to that text, if any of their games are called off this weekend or the teams that they're playing, that could affect the double game week. In other words, wait for the FA Cup games this weekend. If any games are postponed, wait for an announcement about that, how that might affect their Premier League double. I just think that for the time being, you can definitely start thinking, because it might be that all of the games go ahead in the FA Cup this weekend, definitely start thinking, tinkering with your teams, making a free hit draft, thinking about your transfers. Do not activate your free hit, just in case you decide you don't want to play it. If 3 or 4 of these games are called off, you might not want to. So don't activate your free hit. And also definitely don't make any early transfers at this point in time. I just think it's not worth it. We don't know what's going to happen with the FA Cup. Outside of the FA Cup, it might be that after the FA Cup, the Premier League games then postponed. So many things could happen between now and the deadline. We've got such a long period between now and Game Week 22 deadline that it's just not worth making early transfers or activating any chips at the moment, in my opinion. So just keep an eye on the FA Cup games this weekend, and then we'll discuss the impact that might have next week. If you wanted any further confirmation that you should be waiting to make transfers and waiting before you activate any chips, I just wanted to draw your attention to this. It's not a rumour, but it's not been 100% confirmed. It has been, however, tweeted by City_Extra, who are a fairly reliable source. They are not an insider as far as I know, but they have a lot of inside sources that feed information to them. And they said recently, a few hours ago, breaking, Manchester City have announced a total of 7 first-team players that are isolating due to COVID-19 related reasons, with a further 14 members of the backroom staff also isolating. Right, so we've got 21 in total there. Now, it doesn't say isolating due to contracting COVID or having COVID. What it says is due to COVID-related reasons. So they might be awaiting a negative PCR test. It might have been due to them being in close contact with family members. We don't necessarily know that this means there's been a terrible outbreak and that everyone has coronavirus in the Manchester City training ground, but it is one to monitor. And what this just shows is that anything can happen between now and the deadline. So please do wait for any transfers. Wait to activate your chips, because if you activate your free hit, as far as I know, you can't after that deactivate the free hit. As soon as it's activated, you've got to play it for that week. So definitely wait before doing any of that stuff, and keep an eye on the Manchester City news over the next few days. So how are we going to navigate double game week 22? What are the potential strategies? And of course, the strategies all revolve normally around a chip to be played. So the first strategy, which is going to be quite popular for those of us that have not used any of our free hits, so we've still got 2 free hits left, and that is just to play our free hit this week. Now, for those of you that have already played a free hit, this does become a trickier conversation topic. The reason for that is a free hit is often like a get out of jail free when, number one, COVID hits and your team gets absolutely demolished by 3 or 4 fixtures being called off. It can be good to have that in your back pocket. The second reason is that free hits are really, really good to navigate blank game weeks. We know that we're probably going to have a very, very big blank game week in game week 30. There's a blank game week in 27, and we're likely to get one after game week 30 as well. So there could potentially be 2, 3, maybe 4 blank game weeks alongside COVID smashing our teams up. If you've already used your free hit, to use the second one now and be left with absolutely nothing to react to blank game weeks and more COVID postponements, that's probably quite a tricky, risky decision. So I think if I'd already used one of my free hits, I might be tempted to keep the second one for either a blank game week or to respond to further postponements. Of course, there is a small possibility that FPL give out another free hit chip. I highly doubt it, but they have set a precedent of doing so now. So that is an option, but I wouldn't rely on that, definitely. But for those of us that haven't used it at all, I think it's great because you're attacking a double game week, especially if you don't have many double game week players already. You're attacking a double game week with teams like Manchester United, Leicester, Spurs, which isn't bad, Chelsea. There are Brighton. There are some good teams in there that are doubling, despite the fixtures not being great. And you've still got that second one in the back pocket for the reasons that I just listed there. So at the moment, because that's what I'm doing, I prefer free hit as the optimal strategy this week, but only if... Number one, you don't already have loads of doublers in your team, because if you do, you might not need to play it. And number two, if you haven't already played your first free hit. The second strategy is a wild card. Now, I'm not a big fan of this for a number of reasons. The first one being that I just think it's too early. I don't know who I'm going to want for the rest of the season. I don't know how I want to set my team up. With everything that's going on with COVID at the moment, you could wildcard, loads of games get called off, and then your team looks an absolute mess. And I just think that wildcarding is a little bit too permanent at the moment. That's why I like the free hit. Play it for 1 week, attack that week, get my team back, and I've still got the wildcard in the back pocket. I also think the wildcard will be really, really good in the second half of the season, that sort of final quarter, when we've got sort of double blank game week 30, we've got a double game week 34, double game week 36, there might be a double game week 37. Wildcarding into that back stretch would be really nice. And what I like to do is I like to wildcard before a bench boost. And I'm thinking that bench boost in 34 or 36 might be a great play at the end of the season when hopefully COVID is causing less chaos than it is now. And therefore, I would like to wildcard before the bench boost later on in the season. So there are quite a few reasons there that I personally don't want to play the wildcard yet. But the major reason is a lot of the teams that are doubling this week, as we'll discuss in the next section, have terrible or tricky fixtures from game week 23 onwards. So I wouldn't want to wildcard in loads of doublers because I'm not going to want them from game week 23 onwards. That's why I like the free hit. I can bring in players from teams like Leicester who don't have good fixtures from 23 onwards, and then I can ditch them in 23 because I've played my free hit. So I don't really like the wildcard this week. It is a decent option though. If your team's a mess already and you really do think you've got a clear idea of who you want for future game weeks, then by all means play your wildcard. But for me, it's not really an option this week. Strategy 3 is a bench boost. Now, I'm normally a big fan of bench boosting in a double game week. However, it's not the biggest double game week in the world. And the second thing to note is that with everything going on with COVID at the moment, there is a high possibility that, number one, some of these double game weeks become single game weeks, and possibly some of the double game weeks become singles, or some of the singles just get cancelled. It's so tricky to anticipate what is going on at the moment that I just don't think that bench boost is the optimal play this week. I think there's a high possibility that it's wasted because you only end up fielding maybe 11, 12, 13 players rather than the full 15. So for me, bench boost isn't an option. I would much rather save the bench boost for those final few game weeks when hopefully, of course, we don't know this will be the case, but hopefully COVID is less rife and we can have a better idea of which players will be playing. Also, in the second half of the season, or that back end of the season, sometimes it's a little bit clearer which teams are really going for it. If a team is like 5th or 6th and they're going for Champions League football, you know they're pretty much going to play all of their starting 11 constantly. If they're in a relegation battle, you know the similar thing. So it's nice it's sometimes easier to tell in that back end of the season which players are going to play and which aren't. Strategy 4 is the triple captaincy. I don't dislike this, but I just don't think there's a clear favourite for me for the triple captaincy. And there is a high possibility that in the upcoming weeks that Liverpool have a double game week. And it looks like it could potentially be Leeds and Norwich. And that's when Salah's back from AFCON. So that looks like a clear and obvious option to me. You can go for Salah, you can go for Trent, but Leeds and Norwich are two. That could be an incredible double game week. Even if it isn't that, I think I'd rather save it for a single game week Salah than someone like, even like a Dennis or a King. With great fixtures, I think I just prefer to captain someone like Salah. Triple captain, I should say. So again, strategy 4, triple captain, for me isn't on the table, but if you do fancy going a little bit risky with it, I don't mind it. Strategy 5 is probably my second favourite option here. And this is use your free transfers and take a few hits. This is don't play a chip, because of everything that's going on with COVID at the moment. Try and get 5, 6, maybe 7 double game week players out and just roll with it and see what happens. Because yes, the fixtures aren't that great. Also, like I said, with COVID, we don't know what's going to happen. And I don't think many will be able to field more than 7 or 8 double game week players unless they play their free hit. And of course, they're losing a chip if they do so. So I don't mind at all. And this is still an option for me, just using either free transfers or taking a hit. I don't think I'd get away with just using one free transfer. I'd probably take a -4 or -8, try and attack it with I'd end up with maybe 4 or 5 double game week players and just deal with it that way. For me, I think due to the fact that I just don't have enough double game week players as it is, I think I'm more likely to free hit, but I do think that's another good option as well. Let me know down below, what is your current strategy for dealing with double game week 22? You're going to play your free hit, wildcard, bench boost, triple captaincy, or free transfer / hit? Very, very interested to hear what your strategy is. So just building on my point about the wildcard, I just want to explain why I personally am not going to be playing it now, because I know I get a lot of questions around it, and I will get future questions as well about why I'm not wildcarding early, or at least wildcarding in 22. Here's the reason. So this, if you can't see what this is, by the way, if you just bring up the fixtures alongside me, I'm just looking here at the fixtures from game week 23 to game week 28. Of course, you can look longer term if you want, but I think 6 game weeks is fairly long term at the moment, considering everything that's happening. Here are the teams that have the best fixtures from an attacking perspective, according to the Fantasy Football Fix ticker over the next 6 game weeks. They are Villa, who don't double this week. Manchester United, who do, but most of us or some of us will have De Gea and or Ronaldo already, and I think they're the only 2 we'll want. You've then got Manchester City, who of course don't double and might not play at all. You've then got Leeds, West Ham, Newcastle, Everton. So those are the top teams. Out of those, the only team that double this week is Manchester United, and like I said, you might have Ronaldo and or De Gea already. The rest of them only have single game weeks. So if you're wildcarding, are you taking all of those out? And if so, are you not planning on bringing them back in for their nice fixtures? I just find it very, very tricky with these. Do you have loads of single game week players in your wildcard, in which case, do you need to wildcard this week? Or do you take them all out for doublers, but then you're going to want some of these teams back in, especially the likes of West Ham, Leeds, and probably Manchester City and Villa are 2 teams you'd really want to target players from as well, maybe like a Matty Cash or an Ollie Watkins in there as well. Outside of that, if we keep going down, if we go all the way to the bottom, these are the teams that have the worst fixtures from an attacking perspective over the next 6 game weeks. We've got Chelsea, who have a double game week this week, so are you just going to avoid all Chelsea players? They've got Tottenham, 2 blanks, and then some decent fixtures after that, but the next 3 after the double game week is Tottenham and then 2 blanks. You've also got Burnley, 3rd from bottom. I think that Burnley's double game week is pretty good this week. You might want like a Chris Wood or you might want like a Matty Lowton. They've got Arsenal, Man United, Liverpool, Brighton, Crystal Palace, Chelsea. You don't really get much worse fixtures than that. You've also got in there Leicester, 4th from bottom. They have Brighton, Liverpool, West Ham, Wolves, Chelsea, Leeds. Not the best set of fixtures there. And realistically, even that Brighton are about 7th or 8th from bottom. They've got Leicester, then a blank game week. I find it really difficult that the teams that I would want to target in 22 don't have good fixtures from 23 onwards. Equally, the players that I want, therefore, from 23 onwards, I wouldn't want in my free hit. So my idea here is, I've already got triple West Ham, I've got triple Man City, I've got my Manchester United players anyway, I'm looking to bring in Rafinha. If I look at my team as it is now, my team's actually pretty nicely set up from 23 onwards. However, it's not well set up for 22. So it seems crazy to me to wildcard into this double, get rid of players that I will probably want from 23 onwards, just to attack the double. So for me, and this might be because it's the way my team's set up. If your team's set up differently, that's absolutely fine. I plan on free hitting or using free transfers because I don't want to take out too many of my players because I like the way they look from 23 onwards. So what I would do, either using some sort of tracker or just using your own spreadsheet on Excel, plug your team in with the fixtures they've got from 23 to 28. Do you like the way your team looks from 23 to 28 with the current set of fixtures? Obviously, a lot can change between now and then. If you're fairly happy with it and you think you can deal with the issues with a few free transfers, I'm not sure I would wildcard. If you look at it, however, and you go, wow, the team isn't good. I've got loads of Chelsea players, I've got loads of Arsenal players, I've got triple Spurs with really... then you might want to potentially wildcard. But then you've got the tricky decision of, do you take out Chelsea, Leicester, Spurs players before this double game week? That's just my opinion on it. I plan on currently free hitting 22. What I should say as well is you could free hit 22 and then wildcard 23. There you can attack 22 and then wildcard out of 22 into the nice fixtures from 23 onwards. So you could play free hit followed by wildcard. I don't dislike that at all, but for me it's still a little bit early to be playing the wildcard. Let me know down below what your plan is. I've ditched the nice graphics in favour of practicality here because for those of you watching on your phone, I want you to be able to see the players that I'm discussing and see the 2 drafts in front of you. The only player that I'm covering up behind me is 3rd bench on the free hit draft, and that is Brownhill. So what you can see here is my current team with no transfers used on the left of your screen, so furthest away from me. And then the one that I'm covering up slightly on the right of your screen, this is just something that I've quickly thrown together, a quick free hit draft. Now, the reason I've done this is I think if you're looking at playing your free hit, as well as the things we've discussed already, how is your team set up from 23 onwards? Do you want to wildcard? Would you rather play something like a triple captaincy or a bench boost? You have to consider these things. As well as that, I'd like to look at how different is my free hit draft from my current draft, and is there enough upside to warrant playing it? Because for me, I think a wild card, it's difficult to tell how many points it gains you, but from a bench boost, triple captaincy and free hit, I personally think that the free hit is the best chip. It's the one that can gain you the most points. However, it is the only one, apart from if you get a minus score, it's the only one that can lose you points. Now, that's what I don't like about a free hit, is the bench boost. You might not get many points, but it's not going to lose you points, unlikely, unless someone gets sent off on your bench. And again, your triple captaincy is not going to lose you points unless you captain someone that gets minus points. So I hate the free hit because there's the risk, unless you play it in a blank game week, that your current team outscores your free hit team. And that does worry me slightly with the teams that I've set up. So, as I said, on the left, this is my current team with no transfers used. So it's not completely representative of what my team would look like. You can see there are quite a few issues there. Number one is if the City game is called off, I've got triple City. Even if it's not, they're playing against Chelsea, which is far from ideal. I've also got Diogo Dalot there as well. I don't think he's likely to play either of those fixtures. I would be highly surprised if he plays both because it does look like Wan-Bissaka is first choice. Even if he plays one, I don't know which fixture it will be. And then do I really want Dalot in a single fixture when I could have someone else with a double game week? What I do like, however, about my current team is I like the Bowen and Antonio, and I like the Gray and Calvert-Lewin. They're two players from two different teams with really good fixtures, Leeds and Norwich. So I do like the fact that I've got them in there. And if I were to free hit, as you can see on the right, I would take out probably all of them, potentially keep one and maybe keep Bowen in, or maybe keep Gray in because of that midfield spot is nice and cheap. But I do think it's slightly risky, I will be honest. And I'm looking at the players that I'm bringing in for the doubles. I don't think they're better than my current players, but they do play twice. So it's that trade-off of, do you want to bring in players that aren't necessarily better than the ones you've got, but they have two opportunities to score points, or do you just want to stick with the ones you've got and maybe bring in a couple of extra doublers? What I would say is, assuming Dalot doesn't play both games, I therefore only have two players with a double game week. And I think that if I consider I could get between 9 and 11 really double game week players if I were to free hit. I think there's so much more upside there. I'm getting an extra at least 7, probably at least 7 games there. And I just think that there's such upside there. And I really do want to chase that. And I think this is maybe the time to be aggressive, considering the fact I haven't used my first free hit yet. So I don't think personally Ronaldo and De Gea is enough. Of course, like I said, I can use transfers to bring in double game week players. But for me, that team looks a little bit weak. So if you can see on the right, this is a quick free hit draft I've put together. So I've still got Ronaldo and De Gea in there. But I've brought in both Spurs players, Son and Kane. Again, I don't think these are amazing fixtures, but I do think Son and Kane are starting to look better under Conte's new system. And I do think that Arsenal in particular, they could play that 3-5-2, which looks so good for Son and Kane, but specifically Son. They could even potentially play that against Leicester as well. So if they do, I prefer them actually in the 3-5-2 formation. I specifically prefer Son in that formation. But either way, I just think they're two good players to bring in. I've brought in King here just because of price. I'm really struggling to afford this team as it is. I think I'm actually £0.1 million short. I might end up with King and Dennis. I think King and Dennis could be a really, really good double up there. Obviously, I would have to take out probably Harry Kane. I think I'd keep Ronaldo just because I like the fixtures a little bit more. So you could go for King and Dennis. That would save you like 6 million on top of what you've got for Harry Kane. That could be spread around them. In midfield, I've got Maddison, who I think would be a fantastic option if he's confirmed fit. I just think that Burnley is a brilliant, brilliant fixture. And I just don't know. I feel like Maddison's quite a big game player, and I feel like he could perform quite well in the Tottenham game as well. I would keep Jota in the team because I just think he's absolutely fantastic. And Brentford at home is a very, very decent fixture. And I would fancy him to get something there. And I just think, especially with his ownership, but also just with how explosive he is, I'm not sure that I'd prefer any double game week players over him. The other player that I did consider in midfield and that I might consider is Mason Greenwood. Looks absolutely fantastic, but Rangnick did pull him off after like 60 minutes ahead of all of the other players. So it might be that he did look like he might have picked up a knock, but otherwise it might just be that Rangnick doesn't feel like he's the sort of player that can see out 90 minutes, in which case, is he likely to play 2 fixtures? I highly doubt that. So it's difficult to pick another Manchester United midfielder in there, and I think I'll probably avoid as a result. The defence I really do like. The 3 players that I've brought in with double game weeks are Matty Lowton. Again, Burnley aren't fantastic. Leicester's not an easy fixture. And to be honest, Watford are pretty free scoring. That's why I've got King in my team. But I do think that that's potentially a decent fixture to target. If you've watched my videos previously as well, we've spoken about how Matty Lowton has brilliant expected assist data for such a cheap price. So he is quite creative as well, so you never know. If you played last season, Lowton got 17 points in a double game week. He scored a 15-pointer in one of the games. So I think I've probably got that in the back of my mind as well. Got Castagna in there, similar to the Maddison discussion. The fixtures aren't that great, but I would quite like Castagna in there. And I just think he's got quite a lot of attacking threat. You could have potentially Thomas in there, or you could just go for even like a Schmeichel if you wanted to. I don't think Leicester defenders are the worst idea this week, despite the fact that they haven't been brilliant recently in defence. And then Cucurella. He was a player that I wanted to bring in my free transfer last week, if not for the double game week. So Cucurella is someone that I might want to target on the free hit as well. I think I would like a Brighton defender, because I would not be surprised if they hold Chelsea to a draw. We know they can do it. And if they hold Crystal Palace to like a 0-0 draw as well. I don't think they'll score that many goals in this double game week, but 2 clean sheets is not out of the question, and I think I'd want at least one Brighton defender in there. What you can see is my bench doesn't have double game week players. The reason is I just like Bowen a lot. I really would actually quite like Bowen in my team, but I'm not sure that it's worth putting him. I might end up having him in ahead of someone like a Lowton or a Cucurella, because I do think that West Ham will do well against that Leeds side at home as well. But At the moment, he's on my bench. I've also got Johnson on my bench there. So I've got 2 really strong subs, assuming any of my players miss out both double game week fixtures, which is probably highly unlikely. And then behind me is Brownhill just as a third option if I really need it. You could chuck Sissoko in there if you have the money to do so. So that is a potential free hit draft. I would be looking along the lines of that. But like I said, I am tempted to put Dennis and King in which case I have 6 million to then redistribute around the rest of the team. So that could be an option as well. At the moment, I think I'm 70% leaning towards a free hit and 30% free transfers. And sorry, taking a hit instead, so not using a chip. I'm very, very, very unlikely to play a wild card, and I'm not going to play bench boost or triple captaincy at the moment. Those 2 are off the cards for me. So I would say probably 70% free hit, 28% free transfers and a hit, and then maybe that little 2% at the end for potentially a wild card. But free hit is looking quite likely. Next week, whether I free hit or not, I have a more accurate, well-researched free hit draft for you coming next week. So do look out for that. But this is the current draft. Let me know down below, are there any players that I've missed out or any players that you're considering? Potentially like a Chris Wood, I reckon would be quite a popular one as well. Do let me know down below. So guys, there you have it. That is my initial reaction to the double game week 22 announcement, the fixtures, players we should consider, what chip strategies you might want to play, and then also a free hit draft at the end. Apologies that it's a little bit messier. The graphics weren't perfect. I've tried to throw it together as quickly as possible. Like I said, the planned video for today, which has been released, which I would love if you could go and watch, was the FPL Psychology 101 video. I wasn't planning on doing this, but they announced it and I wanted to give you my initial thoughts. So hopefully you still enjoyed the video nonetheless. If you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It's completely free for you to do, but it absolutely helps support me and support the channel as well. And we are pushing towards, a little bit slowly at the moment, but we are pushing towards 10,000 subscribers. So if you would subscribe, that would help massively. Until next time, guys, thank you so much. Cheers. Bye-bye.